The blazing Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on Nora Vance's wide-brimmed hat as she watched her chestnut mare struggle to take another step. The animal's labored breathing and uneven gait growing worse with each passing minute. The journey from Tucson to Colorado City had been ambitious, perhaps too ambitious for a woman traveling alone in 1885, but Nora had never been one to shy away from a challenge, even when common sense suggested she should. "Easy, Penny," Nora soothed, stroking the horse's sweaty neck. The mare whinnied in pain, her right front leg barely touching the ground. Nora dismounted, her boots landing in the dusty trail with a soft thud. She ran her hand down Penny's leg, feeling the unnatural heat radiating from the fetlock joint. The horse was lame, and they were at least 15 miles from the nearest town. Nora glanced at her canteen, noting with dismay how light it felt. Half a day's water at most, and the unforgiving summer heat showed no signs of abating. The vast, empty landscape stretched before her, rolling hills dotted with sagebrush and the occasional scrubby juniper, offering no shelter from the punishing sun. In the distance, purple mountains rose against the horizon, seeming to mock her with their unreachable promise of shade and cooler air. She removed her gloves and wiped the perspiration from her brow, trying to quell the rising panic. Traveling west to take possession of her uncle's ranch had seemed like the answer to her prayers after the devastating fire that had claimed her parents' home in Philadelphia. Now, stranded in the wilderness with an injured horse, Nora wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. The sound of hoofbeats made her turn, one hand instinctively moving to the small revolver concealed in the pocket of her riding skirt. A lone rider approached from the east, the direction from which she had come. Nora tensed. In her 3 weeks of travel, she had encountered both kindness and cruelty on the frontier. There was no telling which this stranger might offer. As the rider drew closer, she could make out a tall man on a powerful black stallion. His face was shadowed by his hat, but his broad shoulders and straight posture suggested strength and confidence. He slowed his horse as he neared, raising a hand in greeting rather than reaching for a weapon. Nora's grip on her revolver relaxed slightly, but she remained wary. "Afternoon, madam," the stranger called out, his voice deep and clear. He tipped his hat, revealing sun-bronzed features and eyes as blue as the Arizona sky. "Looks like you've got yourself some trouble." "My horse has gone lame," Nora replied, trying to keep her voice steady despite her predicament. "I believe it's her fetlock." The man dismounted with fluid grace, his spurs jingling softly as his boots hit the ground. He approached slowly, respectfully keeping some distance. "Name's Cole Reynolds, madam. I ranch about 20 miles north of here. Mind if I take a look at your mare?" Nora nodded cautiously. "Nora Vance. I'd appreciate your expertise, Mr. Reynolds." Cole moved toward Penny with the easy confidence of someone who had spent a lifetime around horses. He murmured soothingly to the mare before gently lifting her injured leg. His touch was firm but gentle, his examination thorough. Nora watched, noting the care with which he handled her beloved horse. After a few minutes, Cole straightened and shook his head. "It's a bad sprain, Miss Vance. She needs rest at least a week, maybe more, and cold compresses. She can't carry you any further today, that's for certain." Nora's heart sank. A week delayed meant a week's less preparation before winter set in. The letter from her uncle's lawyer had been clear. If she didn't claim the property by the 1st of October, it would be sold to cover her uncle's debts. September was already half gone. "I need to reach Colorado City," she said, unable to keep the desperation from her voice. "My uncle left me his ranch, and I must claim it before the 1st of October." Cole's eyes widened slightly. "Jeremiah Vance was your uncle?" Nora blinked in surprise. "You knew him?" "Everyone within 100 miles knew Jeremiah," Cole replied, a small smile playing at his lips. "Ornery as they come, but a fair man. His place borders mine to the west. I'm sorry for your loss, Miss Vance." "Thank you," Nora said softly. "I hadn't seen him since I was a child, but he was my only living relative. Now I need to reach his property, but—" She gestured helplessly at Penny. Cole was silent for a moment, considering. His gaze traveled from Nora to her injured horse, then to the horizon. Finally, he seemed to reach a decision. "Take my horse," he said, patting the black stallion's neck. Midnight's strong and sure-footed. He'll get you to Colorado City safely." Nora stared at him in disbelief. "And what will you do?" "I couldn't possibly. I'll walk beside you," Cole interrupted. "Lead your mare. There's a small homestead about 5 miles ahead where we can leave her to recover. The McKinneys are good folk. They'll take care of her." "But that would delay your journey significantly," Nora protested. "I can't ask you to do that." "You didn't ask," Cole replied with a slight smile. "I offered. Besides, it seems we're headed in the same direction, and a gentleman doesn't leave a lady stranded in the wilderness." There was something in his direct gaze that made Nora believe him a steadiness, an inherent decency that she hadn't expected to find in this harsh land. Still, years of maintaining her independence in a world that constantly sought to undermine, it made her hesitate. "I can pay you for your trouble," she offered, reaching for her reticule. Cole shook his head. "That won't be necessary, Miss Vance. Consider it neighborly assistance. After all, we're to be neighbors soon enough." Before Nora could protest further, Cole efficiently transferred her saddlebags to his stallion. He adjusted the stirrups for her shorter legs and offered his hand to help her mount. Nora hesitated only briefly before accepting his assistance. As her fingers touched his calloused palm, she felt an unexpected warmth that had nothing to do with the Arizona heat. Once she was settled in the saddle, Cole gathered Penny's reins and began to lead the way, setting a steady pace that wouldn't overtax the injured mare. Nora watched his back as he walked ahead of her, broad shoulders moving rhythmically, his gait unhurried yet purposeful. "Mr. Reynolds," she called. When he turned to look at her, the setting sun caught in his eyes, turning them to a deeper shade of blue. "Thank you." He tipped his hat with a small smile. "My pleasure, Miss Vance. Now tell me what brings a Philadelphia lady to the Arizona territory." As they continued their journey with Cole walking steadily beside the horses, Nora found herself sharing the story of the fire that had destroyed her family home and the subsequent discovery that her uncle had left her his ranch. Cole listened attentively, occasionally asking questions or offering observations about the land they were passing through. "It's different from what I expected," Nora admitted, looking at the rugged landscape around them. "Harsher, yet there's a stark beauty to it." "That's Arizona for you," Cole replied. "She doesn't give her gifts easily, but what she does give is worth the struggle." His eyes met hers briefly. "The land tests you, Miss Vance. Some folks can't abide that testing and head back east. Others find they belong here more than anywhere else they've ever been." "And which are you, Mr. Reynolds?" A small smile touched his lips. "Born in Boston, but I've been out here since I was 18. Couldn't imagine living anywhere else now." The sun was beginning to set when they reached the McKinney homestead, a modest but well-maintained adobe house with a sturdy barn and corral. A woman with graying hair pulled back in a severe bun was hanging laundry on a line stretched between 2 posts. She stopped her work as they approached, shading her eyes against the setting sun. "Cole Reynolds, is that you walking like some common drifter?" she called out, her voice carrying easily across the yard. Cole chuckled. "Afternoon, Mrs. McKinney. We've got ourselves a situation here." The woman approached, her keen eyes taking in the scene. Nora on Cole's horse, Cole leading the limping mare. "So I see. And who might this young lady be?" "Nora Vance, madam," Nora replied before Cole could speak for her. "I'm Jeremiah Vance's niece." Mrs. McKinney's expression softened. "Old Jeremiah's niece, are you? Well, God rest his soul. He spoke of you sometimes, his brother's girl back east. I'm Martha McKinney. My husband Thomas and I have been neighbors to your uncle for nigh on 15 years. Miss Vance's horse has gone lame," Cole explained. "I was hoping you might be willing to keep the mare here until she's sound again." Martha nodded decisively. "Of course we will. Thomas will know just what to do for her. He has a way with horses." She turned her attention back to Nora. "You'll stay for supper and the night, of course." "It's too late to be traveling further today." Nora opened her mouth to protest, but Martha waved away her objections before they could be voiced. "I won't hear of anything else. The good Lord didn't put us on this earth to let folks go hungry or sleep under the stars when there's a perfectly good roof available." Cole helped Nora dismount, his hands strong and steady at her waist. For a brief moment, She was acutely aware of how close they were, close enough that she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes and smell the clean, masculine scent of him. Then he stepped back, and the moment passed. Thomas McKinney emerged from the barn, a tall, lean man with weathered features and kind eyes. After introductions were made and the situation explained, he led Penny away to tend to her injury, promising to take good care of her. Martha ushered them into the house, insisting they wash up before the evening meal. The inside of the McKinney home was simple but comfortable, with handmade furniture and colorful woven rugs on the packed earth floor. Nora was shown to a small room where a basin of water had been placed for her to freshen up. As she removed the dust from her face and hands, Nora caught a glimpse of herself in the small mirror hanging on the wall. Her normally neat auburn hair was coming loose from its pins, and her cheeks were flushed from the sun. She looked different somehow, less the proper Philadelphia lady and more. What? She couldn't quite define it, but something had begun to shift within her during this journey west. Dinner was a simple but hearty affair: venison stew, freshly baked bread, and preserved peaches. The conversation flowed easily, with Martha eager to share stories about Jeremiah Vance and the surrounding area. "Your uncle was a character, Miss Vance," Thomas said with a chuckle. "Stubborn as the day is long, but a man of his word. That ranch of his is one of the finest in the territory, good water, good grazing land. He built it up from nothing," Martha added. "Came out here with just a wagon and a few head of cattle, if I recall correctly." "That's right," Cole confirmed. "Started with barely 100 acres and expanded to over 2,000 by the time he passed." He turned to Nora. "You've inherited a valuable property, Miss Vance." "I'm beginning to understand that," Nora replied thoughtfully. "Though I confess I know very little about ranching." "You'll learn," Martha said confidently. "And you've got good neighbors to help. Cole here runs the most successful operation in the county, except for maybe the Hollister spread down south." Cole looked slightly embarrassed by the praise. "I've had some lucky years." "Luck has nothing to do with it," Thomas countered. "Hard work and good sense, that's what it takes. Speaking of which, how's that irrigation project of yours coming along?" As the men discussed ranching matters, Martha leaned closer to Nora. "It's a hard life out here for a woman alone," she said quietly. "Have you considered that?" Nora straightened her shoulders. "I'm not afraid of hard work, Mrs. McKinney, and I have nowhere else to go." Martha studied her for a moment, then nodded approvingly. "You've got spirit, I'll give you that. Your uncle had the same look in his eye, like you wouldn't back down from a fight if it was important enough." She patted Nora's hand. "Just remember, accepting help doesn't mean giving up your independence. Out here, we all rely on each other from time to time." Nora glanced across the table at Cole, who was explaining something about water rights to Thomas. He caught her gaze and gave her a small smile before returning to the conversation. "I'm learning that lesson already," Nora replied softly. After dinner, they gathered on the porch to enjoy the cool evening air. The sky above was a vast canopy of stars, more than Nora had ever seen in Philadelphia. The Milky Way stretched across the heavens like a ribbon of light, and the silence of the desert was broken only by the occasional call of a night bird. "It's beautiful," Nora murmured, looking up at the sky. "One of the things I love most about this land," Cole said, his voice equally quiet. He was leaning against a porch post, his profile outlined against the starlit sky. "No matter how harsh the day has been, the night sky makes you feel like you're part of something greater." They fell into a comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Thomas and Martha had gone inside to prepare for bed, leaving Nora and Cole alone on the porch. "Mr. Reynolds," Nora began hesitantly, "I want to thank you again for your help today. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come along." Cole turned to face her fully. "I'm glad I was there to help, Miss Vance, and please call me Cole. If we're to be neighbors, we might as well be on familiar terms." "Then you must call me Nora," she replied with a small smile. "Especially since you'll be walking beside me for the next 10 miles or so." "Nora," he repeated, as if testing the sound of her name on his tongue. "It suits you." A comfortable silence fell between them again, broken only when Cole straightened and said, "We should both get some rest. We've got a long journey ahead tomorrow." Nora nodded, suddenly aware of how tired she was. The stress of the day and the relief of finding help had taken their toll. "Good night, Cole." "Good night, Nora," he replied softly. "Sleep well." As Nora prepared for bed in the small room Martha had given her, she found her thoughts returning to the tall, blue-eyed rancher who had come to her aid. There was something about Cole Reynolds that intrigued her, a quiet strength, a steadiness that seemed rare in her experience of men. Most of the gentlemen she had known in Philadelphia had been more concerned with appearances and social standing than with character or kindness. She drifted off to sleep with the image of Cole walking beside Midnight, his hand occasionally reaching up to adjust her stirrup or to check that she was comfortable. In her dreams, they walked together through an endless landscape of purple mountains and golden valleys, always side by side. Morning came early at the McKinney homestead. Nora awoke to the smell of coffee and the sound of activity in the kitchen. She dressed quickly in her riding clothes, grateful that she had chosen practical garments for her journey west rather than the fashionable but impractical attire many women wore even for travel. When she emerged from her room, she found Martha frying bacon and eggs while Thomas and Cole sat at the table, deep in conversation. Cole rose when he saw her, nodding a good morning. "How's Penny?" Nora asked, accepting a cup of coffee from Martha with a grateful smile. "Resting comfortably," Thomas replied. "I've wrapped her leg and given her something for the pain. She's a fine animal with proper care. She should recover completely." "I can't thank you enough for taking her in," Nora said sincerely. "Think nothing of it," Martha replied, placing a plate of food in front of Nora. "Now eat up. You've got a long journey ahead and no one travels well on an empty stomach." Breakfast was a hearty affair and the conversation flowed easily. By the time they had finished eating, the sun was just beginning to rise above the eastern horizon. Cole went to prepare Midnight while Nora gathered her belongings and thanked the McKinneys for their hospitality. "You're welcome here anytime," Martha said, pressing a bundle of food into Nora's hands. "And don't be a stranger once you're settled at Jeremiah's place. It's good to have another woman nearby." Thomas shook Nora's hand firmly. "Your uncle was a good friend. I'm glad his land is passing to family rather than being sold off to strangers. If you need any help getting settled, you just send word." Outside, Cole was adjusting Midnight's saddle. He had refilled their canteens and secured Nora's belongings behind the saddle. He helped her mount, his hands steady and strong at her waist. "Ready?" he asked, looking up at her. Nora nodded, settling herself in the saddle. "As ready as I'll ever be." With final farewells to the McKinneys, they set off, Cole walking beside Midnight with his hand resting lightly on the bridle. The morning air was cool and clear, the landscape painted in the soft hues of dawn. Ahead of them, the trail wound through rolling hills toward the distant mountains. "Did you sleep well?" Cole asked after they had been traveling for a while. "Better than I expected," Nora replied. "The McKinneys are very kind people." "Salt of the earth," Cole agreed. "They've helped me out of a tight spot or two over the years." "That's how it works out here. We look after each other." "It's different from Philadelphia," Nora observed. "There, people are so concerned with propriety and social standing that real kindness often gets lost." Cole glanced up at her, curiosity in his blue eyes. "What made you decide to claim your uncle's ranch? Most Eastern ladies I've met would have sold the property without a second thought." Nora was silent for a moment, considering her answer. "After my parents died in the fire, I found myself at the mercy of distant relatives who saw me as either a burden or an opportunity. My cousin Edward made it clear that he expected my gratitude for his generosity to take the form of marriage." Her voice hardened. "I had no intention of becoming the wife of a man who viewed me as a possession to be acquired." Cole's expression darkened. "Sounds like a real gentleman," he said, his voice laced with sarcasm. "He considered himself one," Nora replied with a small, bitter laugh. "When my uncle's lawyer contacted me about the inheritance, it seemed like Providence offering an escape. I sold what few possessions I had managed to salvage from the fire, purchased a train ticket west, and never looked back." "That took courage," Cole said quietly. Nora shrugged. "Or desperation," Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. Either way, Cole replied, you're made of sterner stuff than most, taking on a ranch alone with no experience that's not a challenge many would willingly accept. I'm a fast learner, Nora said with more confidence than she felt. And I refuse to be defeated before I've even begun. Cole smiled up at her, the morning sun catching in his eyes. With that attitude, Miss Vance, I believe you'll do just fine out here. As the day progressed, the temperature rose steadily. Cole maintained a steady pace, occasionally stopping to rest and drink from their canteens. During these breaks, he would point out features of the landscape or tell her about the local flora and fauna. Nora listened attentively, storing away the information for future use. That ridge there, Cole said during one such stop, pointing to a formation in the distance, marks the eastern boundary of your uncle's property. Beyond it is a valley with one of the best year-round streams in the county. Jeremiah was smart to secure water rights when he did. Nora studied the ridge, trying to imagine living in this vast, open country. How far to the main house from there? About 3 miles, give or take. It's set back against those foothills, protected from the worst of the winter winds. Your uncle built it solid 2 stories, with a wide porch and plenty of room. And your ranch? Nora asked, curious about her new neighbor's property. North and west of yours, Cole replied. My main house is about 5 miles from Jeremiah's place as the crow flies, though it's closer to 8 by the road. Not exactly next door then, Nora observed with a small smile. Cole chuckled. By Western standards, we're practically on top of each other. Some ranchers have to ride for a full day to reach their nearest neighbor. As they continued their journey, Nora found herself studying Cole when he wasn't looking her way. There was an easy grace to his movements, a quiet confidence that came from years of hard work and self-reliance. His features were strong and weathered from the sun, but there was a gentleness in his eyes that belied his rugged appearance. She wondered about his story, what had brought him west from Boston, why he had stayed when so many others returned east. There was clearly more to Cole Reynolds than met the eye, and Nora found herself increasingly curious about the man walking beside her horse. They stopped for lunch in the shade of a small grove of cottonwoods beside a dry creek bed. Cole spread his coat on the ground for Nora to sit on, despite her protests that she didn't mind sitting directly on the earth. My mother would haunt me from the grave if she knew I'd let a lady sit in the dirt, he said with a wry smile. Some habits are too deeply ingrained to break. As they shared the food Martha had packed for them, Nora finally asked the question that had been on her mind. What brought you to Arizona Territory, Cole? You mentioned you were born in Boston. Cole was quiet for a moment, taking a drink from his canteen before answering. My father was in banking. He had my life all planned out Harvard, then into the family business, marriage to the daughter of one of his associates, a perfectly respectable life. But not the one you wanted, Nora guessed. Not even close, Cole confirmed. I wanted adventure, open spaces. I read dime novels about the West until the pages fell apart. He smiled at the memory. When I was 18, my father and I had a tremendous argument. He said if I didn't buckle down and follow the path he'd laid out, I could get out of his house. So you left, Nora said softly. Cole nodded. That very night. Took what money I had saved, bought a train ticket as far west as I could afford, and worked my way from there. Cowhand, miner, freight driver, I did whatever jobs came my way, sent letters home now and then, but my father never replied. I'm sorry, Nora said, genuinely moved by his story. Don't be, Cole replied. It was hard at first, but I found where I belonged, saved every penny, bought my first piece of land 7 years ago, added to it bit by bit. Now I've got one of the most successful cattle operations in the territory. There was a quiet pride in his voice, not boastful but satisfied. And your family, Nora asked hesitantly, did you ever reconcile? A shadow passed over Cole's features. My father died 5 years ago, heart failure. My mother had passed 2 years before that. By the time I received word and made it back to Boston, they were both already in the ground. I'm so sorry, Nora said again, unable to find more adequate words for such a loss. Cole shrugged, but she could see the old pain in his eyes. Life rarely gives us second chances to say the things we should have said. It's a hard lesson. He paused, then added more lightly, "My younger sister writes to me regularly, though. She's married to a doctor in New York now, has 2 children." "You're an uncle," Nora said with a smile, trying to lighten the mood. "Apparently so, though I've only seen my nephew and niece in photographs. Someday I hope to meet them in person." As they finished their meal and prepared to continue their journey, Nora found herself thinking about the parallels in their stories. Both had left behind the world they knew. Both were seeking a new beginning in this harsh but beautiful land. Perhaps that was why she felt so comfortable in Cole's company, despite having known him for less than a day. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as they continued toward Colorado City. Cole maintained a steady pace, occasionally wiping the sweat from his brow with a bandana. Nora offered several times to walk for a while so that he could ride, but Cole politely refused. "I'm used to being on my feet all day," he assured her. "And we're making good time. We should reach town by nightfall." As they crested a rise, Cole suddenly held up his hand, signaling for Nora to stop. He had gone very still, his gaze fixed on something in the distance. Nora followed his line of sight but saw nothing unusual, just more of the same rugged landscape they had been traversing all day. "What is it?" she asked quietly. "Riders," Cole replied, his voice low. "5 of them coming this way fast." Now Nora could see them, small figures in the distance, approaching rapidly. "Is that unusual?" Cole's expression was grim. "Could be nothing, could be trouble." "Not many honest men ride that hard in this heat." He reached up and took Midnight's reins. "Let's move off the trail. There's a stand of rocks over there where we can watch without being seen." He led the horse off the trail toward a formation of large boulders that would provide both concealment and some protection if needed. Once they were positioned behind the rocks, Cole helped Nora dismount. "Stay here with Midnight," he instructed, removing a rifle from its scabbard on the saddle. "If there's trouble, get on him and ride hard for those hills." He pointed to the east. "There's a canyon there where you can hide until it's safe." Nora's heart was racing, but she kept her voice steady. "And what about you?" Cole checked the rifle's chamber before answering. "I'll be right behind you, but hopefully they're just cowboys in a hurry to reach town." They waited in tense silence as the riders drew nearer. Through a gap in the rocks, Nora could now make out details: 5 men on lathered horses, riding hard. As they came closer, she could see that they were rough-looking individuals, unshaven and dusty. 2 of them had bandanas pulled up over their faces despite the heat. "Trouble," Cole muttered, confirming Nora's fears. Just as the riders were about to pass their hiding place, one of the men shouted and pointed in their direction. To Nora's horror, the group wheeled their horses and headed straight for the rock formation. "They've spotted us," Cole said grimly. "Get ready to run if I tell you to." But instead of preparing to flee, Nora reached into her saddlebag and pulled out her small revolver. Cole glanced at her in surprise, but there was no time for discussion. The riders were nearly upon them. "That's far enough," Cole called out as the men approached, his rifle raised and ready. "State your business." The riders pulled up about 20 yards away, their hands hovering near their weapons. The apparent leader, a burly man with a thick mustache and cold eyes, assessed the situation before speaking. "Well now, what do we have here?" he drawled, his gaze lingering on Nora. "A man and a woman hiding behind rocks. Seems mighty suspicious." "We're not hiding," Cole replied evenly, "just resting out of the sun. Now state your business or move along." The leader's eyes narrowed. "Mighty unfriendly attitude, mister." "Maybe we're just concerned citizens checking on travelers." His gaze shifted to Midnight. "That's a fine horse you've got there." "He's not for sale," Cole said firmly. "And we're doing just fine, as you can see. Now I suggest you gentlemen continue on your way." The tension in the air was palpable. Nora could see the men exchanging glances, silently communicating. Her finger tightened on the trigger of her revolver, though she kept it partially concealed in the folds of her skirt. Just as it seemed the situation might erupt into violence, the sound of more hoofbeats reached them, a larger group, approaching rapidly from the direction of Colorado City. The leader cursed under his breath. "Boys, I think it's time we made ourselves scarce." He tipped his hat mockingly toward Nora. "Another time, perhaps, madam. With that, the riders wheeled their horses and galloped away, heading west into the hills. Cole kept his rifle trained on them until they were well out of range, the tension in his shoulders only slightly relaxing as they disappeared from view. "Who were they?" Nora asked, her heart still racing. "Trouble," Cole replied grimly. "Probably the Daggett gang. They've been raiding homesteads and robbing travelers all across the territory for months now." Before Nora could respond, the second group of riders came into view, about a dozen men, well armed and riding with purpose. At their head was a tall man with a silver star pinned to his vest. "That's Sheriff Buchanan," Cole said, lowering his rifle. "Seems like our luck is holding today." The sheriff and his posse pulled up when they spotted Cole and Nora emerging from behind the rocks. Recognition dawned on the lawman's weathered face. "Cole Reynolds," he called out. "Don't tell me those vermin were giving you trouble." "They were considering it," Cole replied, striding forward to shake the sheriff's hand. "But you showed up at just the right time, Mark." He turned to gesture toward Nora. "This is Miss Nora Vance, Jeremiah's niece from back east. She's come to claim his ranch. Miss Vance, Sheriff Mark Buchanan." The sheriff tipped his hat respectfully. "Madam, sorry about that. Welcome to our territory. The Daggetts have been a thorn in our side for too long." "You're pursuing them?" Cole asked. Sheriff Buchanan nodded grimly. "Got word they robbed the Wilcox stage yesterday. 2 passengers killed. We've been on their trail since dawn." He glanced in the direction the gang had fled. "Which way did they go?" Cole pointed toward the western hills. "Headed that way about 5 minutes ago, riding hard." The sheriff nodded decisively. "We'll catch them this time." He turned to his men. "Let's ride, boys. They can't have gotten far." To Cole and Nora, he added, "You two best get to town before dark. I'd feel better knowing you were safely behind doors." With that, the posse galloped off in pursuit of the outlaws, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. Cole watched them go, his expression troubled. "Let's get moving," he said, helping Nora back onto Midnight. "The sheriff's right, we should reach town before nightfall." As they continued their journey, the encounter with the Daggett gang cast a shadow over what had been a pleasant, if challenging, day. Nora found herself scanning the horizon frequently, unable to shake the memory of the leader's cold eyes and the way he had looked at her. "Are encounters like that common?" she asked Cole as they crested yet another rise. Cole shook his head. "No, thank God. The territory is becoming more civilized every year, but there are still lawless elements, especially in the more remote areas." "And my uncle's ranch, our properties, are they considered remote?" "Remote enough to require vigilance," Cole admitted. "But close enough to Colorado City for safety in numbers. Most ranchers in the area look out for each other, regardless of personal differences. When trouble comes, we stand together." This was reassuring, but it also emphasized for Nora just how different her new life would be from her protected existence in Philadelphia. There, danger had come in the form of social ostracism or financial ruin. Here, it could be far more immediate and lethal. Yet strangely, she wasn't afraid, not in the way she perhaps should have been. There was something about this land, about the vast open spaces and the clear blue sky, that made her feel more alive than she ever had in the crowded streets of Philadelphia. And there was something about the man walking beside her horse, his stride never faltering despite the heat and distance, that made her feel safer than she had since her parents' deaths. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, they finally caught sight of Colorado City in the distance, a collection of buildings nestled in a valley, with the spire of a church rising above the other structures. Nora felt a surge of relief and anticipation. They had made it. Cole glanced up at her with a smile. "Almost there. How are you holding up?" "Better than I expected," Nora replied honestly, "though I confess I'm looking forward to a proper meal and a real bed tonight." "The Western Star Hotel has both," Cole assured her. "Nothing fancy, but clean and comfortable. We can stable Midnight there for the night and get an early start for your uncle's ranch tomorrow." "You're still willing to accompany me?" Nora asked, somewhat surprised that he would extend his assistance further. "Of course," Cole replied, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I promised to see you safely to your property, and that's what I intend to do." The simple sincerity in his voice touched something deep within Nora. In Philadelphia, men's promises had so often come with hidden conditions or expectations. Cole's straightforward commitment to helping her a virtual stranger was refreshing and moving. "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness." Cole looked up at her, his blue eyes serious. "Being a good neighbor will be repayment enough, Miss Vance. That's how we survive out here, by helping each other when it's needed." As they approached the outskirts of Colorado City, the sounds and smells of the settlement reached them: horses nickering, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the aroma of food cooking. Despite its small size compared to Philadelphia, the town had a bustling energy that spoke of growth and possibility. Cole led them down the main street, past the general store, the barber shop, and the sheriff's office. People called out greetings to him as they passed, and he responded with friendly nods or brief words. It was clear he was well known and respected in the community. The Western Star Hotel was a 2-story wooden building with a wide porch and large windows. As they stopped in front of it, a young stable boy ran out to take midnight's reins. "Evening, Mr. Reynolds," the boy said enthusiastically. "Want me to take care of your horse?" "Thanks, Jimmy," Cole replied, helping Nora dismount. "Give him extra oats tonight, he's carried a double burden today." As Cole paid the boy and gave instructions for midnight's care, Nora took the opportunity to stretch her legs and observe the town. Colorado City was smaller than she had imagined, but it had a certain charm. The buildings were well maintained, the streets relatively clean for a frontier settlement, and the people she observed going about their business seemed purposeful and content. "Shall we get you settled?" Cole asked, returning to her side. Inside, the hotel was simple but clean, with a small lobby and a dining room visible through an archway. A middle-aged woman with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun stood behind the front desk, her face lighting up with recognition when she saw Cole. "Mr. Reynolds, what a pleasant surprise. We weren't expecting you in town this week." "Hello, Mrs. Harmon," Cole replied with a smile. "I'm accompanying Miss Vance here. She's Jeremiah Vance's niece, come to claim his property." Mrs. Harmon's gaze shifted to Nora, warm interest in her eyes. "Is that so? Well, welcome to Colorado City, Miss Vance. Your uncle was a good man, a bit rough around the edges, but good-hearted. We were all sorry to hear of his passing." "Thank you," Nora replied, finding herself genuinely touched by yet another warm remembrance of an uncle she barely remembered. "Miss Vance will need a room for the night," Cole said. "The best you have available, please." "Of course, Mrs. Harmon replied, reaching for a key from a board behind her. "Room 203, it has a lovely view of the mountains and a private washroom." As Cole reached for his wallet, Nora placed a hand on his arm. "Please, let me, you've already done so much." For a moment, it seemed Cole might insist on paying, but then he nodded. "As you wish." Nora completed the transaction, and Mrs. Harmon handed her the key with a warm smile. "Dinner is served until 8 o'clock, nothing fancy but solid home cooking." "Thank you," Nora replied. "That sounds perfect." As they climbed the stairs to the second floor, Nora was acutely aware of Cole's presence behind her. Despite having spent the entire day in his company, there was something different about being with him in this more civilized setting, as if the walls of the hotel had suddenly made their situation more intimate than the open spaces of the trail. Room 203 was at the end of the hallway, with windows on 2 sides, just as Mrs. Harmon had promised. Cole carried Nora's saddlebags into the room and set them down near the dresser. "I'll leave you to get settled," he said, stepping back toward the door. "Would you care to join me for dinner in an hour? I'd be happy to tell you more about the area and what to expect at your uncle's ranch." "I'd like that very much," Nora replied, suddenly reluctant to see him go after spending the entire day in his company. Cole nodded, his hand on the doorknob. "I'll see you downstairs at 7 then." After he had gone, Nora sat on the edge of the bed, exhaling deeply. The events of the past 2 days swirled in her mind: her horse going lame, meeting Cole, the encounter with the Daggett gang. So much had happened in such a short time, and tomorrow she would finally see her uncle's ranch, her new home. She rose and went to the window, looking out at the mountains in the distance. Somewhere beyond those peaks was her property, her future. The prospect was both exciting and terrifying. What did she really know about ranching? What if she failed with an effort? Nora pushed those doubts aside and focused on preparing for dinner. The room had a washstand with a pitcher and basin, and she used the cool water to wash away the dust of the trail. From her saddlebags, she extracted a simple but elegant blue dress, one of the few non-riding outfits she had brought with her. After changing and arranging her hair as best she could without a lady's maid, she studied her reflection in the small mirror above the washstand. The woman who looked back at her seemed different from the one who had left Philadelphia weeks ago. Her skin was tanned from the sun, her eyes clearer, her bearing more confident. The West was already changing her, and she had barely arrived. At precisely 7 o'clock, Nora descended the stairs to the lobby. Cole was waiting for her, and the expression on his face when he saw her made her heart beat a little faster. He had clearly taken the time to clean up as well. His hair was damp from washing, and he had changed into a clean shirt and vest. "You look lovely, Miss Vance," he said, the admiration in his eyes warming her more than the words themselves. "Thank you," she replied, feeling a blush creep into her cheeks. "And please, I thought we had agreed on Nora." Cole smiled. "Nora, then, shall we?" The dining room was about half full, with a mix of travelers and local residents enjoying their evening meal. As Cole led Nora to a table near the window, several people nodded in greeting or called out to him. He introduced Nora to a few of them, and she was once again struck by the genuine warmth with which she was welcomed as Jeremiah Vance's niece. Once they were seated, a young waitress brought them menus and filled their water glasses. The offerings were simple but appealing: roast beef, chicken, and dumplings, trout fresh from the nearby river. "The trout is excellent," Cole recommended. "Albert, the cook, has a secret recipe for the seasoning that he refuses to share with anyone." After they had placed their orders and been served cups of hot coffee, Nora found herself relaxing for the first time in days. The dining room was warm and comfortable, with the soft murmur of conversation and the occasional burst of laughter creating a pleasant atmosphere. "It's strange," she said, looking around the room. "I've only just arrived, and yet I already feel more at home here than I did in Philadelphia after the fire." Cole studied her across the table, his blue eyes thoughtful. "Some places just fit a person better than others. I felt that way when I first came west, like I could finally breathe properly." "Yes, that's it exactly," Nora agreed, surprised and pleased that he understood. "It's as if a weight has been lifted, even though I know the challenges ahead are substantial." "Speaking of those challenges," Cole said, leaning forward slightly, "I've been thinking about your situation. Taking on a ranch the size of your uncle's is a lot for anyone, let alone someone new to ranching." Nora tensed slightly, expecting him to suggest that she sell the property after all, but Cole surprised her. "I'd like to offer my help," he continued, "not just tomorrow, but in the weeks ahead. I could stop by every few days, make sure you're settling in, help with any immediate issues that arise. My foreman, Miguel, is more than capable of managing my day-to-day operations, so I can spare the time." Nora was touched by the offer but hesitated to accept. "That's incredibly generous, but I couldn't impose on you to that extent." "It's not an imposition," Cole assured her. "Good neighbors help each other, and as I said before, our properties share a boundary. Your success as a rancher will benefit the entire area." Before Nora could respond, their food arrived: plates of perfectly cooked trout with roasted potatoes and fresh greens. The aroma was mouthwatering, and both of them turned their attention to the meal. After a few bites, Nora had to agree with Cole's assessment: the trout was indeed excellent, seasoned with herbs and butter in a way that enhanced rather than overpowered the delicate flavor of the fish. As they ate, Cole told her more about the area, the seasons, the local economy, the families who had settled nearby. Nora listened attentively, asking questions and storing away the information for future reference. "The first winter is the hardest," Cole warned her. "The cold can be brutal, and if you're not prepared, it can be deadly. You'll need to ensure the house is properly insulated, the livestock have adequate shelter, and you have enough supplies to last until spring." "Is the ranch currently operational?" Nora asked. I know my uncle passed away several months ago. Cole nodded. Your uncle's foreman, Henry Wilson, has kept things running. He's a good man, honest and hardworking. The herd is smaller than it was in your uncle's prime, but still substantial, about 500 head, mostly Hereford cattle. There's also a small horse breeding operation that was Jeremiah's pride and joy in his later years. This was encouraging news. Nora had feared she might arrive to find the property neglected or in disrepair. The fact that operations had continued in her absence was a relief. And this Henry Wilson, do you think he'd be willing to stay on, at least until I learn the business? I'm certain he would, Cole replied. He was devoted to your uncle and he loves that ranch almost as much as Jeremiah did, but he hesitated. But what? Nora prompted. Henry's getting older, past 60 now. He's a fine foreman, but the physical demands of the job are becoming difficult for him. Your uncle was planning to hire a younger man to work alongside Henry, let him train the fellow to eventually take over. But then Jeremiah fell ill and the plan was never implemented. Nora considered this information thoughtfully, so I'll need to hire additional help regardless. Yes, but that's not unusual. Most ranches of that size have at least 3 or 4 full-time hands, plus seasonal workers during calving and roundup. The conversation continued as they finished their meal and lingered over coffee and apple pie. Nora found herself increasingly comfortable in Cole's company, drawn to his intelligence and practical knowledge as much as to his quiet strength and kindness. As the dining room began to empty, Nora realized how late it had grown. I should retire, she said, though somewhat reluctantly. Tomorrow will be another long day, Cole nodded, rising to pull out her chair. I'll meet you here for breakfast at 7 if that suits you. We can be on the road by 8 and reach your ranch well before midday. That would be perfect, Nora replied, gathering her shawl. Thank you again for everything, Cole. I don't know what I would have done without your help these past 2 days. It's been my pleasure, he said simply, and she could see in his eyes that he meant it. He escorted her to the foot of the stairs where they paused. For a moment neither spoke, and Nora was acutely aware of his presence, the slight scent of soap and leather, the way the lamplight caught in his dark hair, the warmth in his blue eyes as they met hers. Good night, Nora, he said finally, his voice softer than usual. Good night, Cole, she replied, equally soft. Until tomorrow. As she climbed the stairs to her room, Nora found herself thinking not just about the ranch that awaited her, but about the man who had come into her life so unexpectedly. There was something about Cole Reynolds that touched her in a way no man ever had: a quiet strength, an unassuming confidence, a kindness that asked nothing in return. In her room, Nora prepared for bed, her mind still full of the day's events and the conversation over dinner. As she blew out the lamp and slipped between the clean sheets, she found herself looking forward to tomorrow with an anticipation that had as much to do with Cole's continued company as with seeing her new home for the first time. Morning dawned clear and cool, with the promise of another warm day to follow. Nora woke early, excited and somewhat nervous about what the day would bring. She dressed carefully in her riding clothes, packed her few belongings in her saddlebags, and made her way downstairs. Cole was already in the dining room, a cup of coffee in front of him as he studied what appeared to be a map spread on the table. He rose when he saw her, and the smile that lit his face sent a warm flutter through her chest. Good morning, he greeted her. I hope you slept well. Very well, thank you, Nora replied, taking the seat he held for her. Are you planning our route? She asked, gesturing to the map. Cole nodded, pouring her a cup of coffee from the pot on the table. There are 2 ways to reach your ranch from here. The main road is longer but easier traveling. The other route cuts through the foothills. It's more direct but rougher terrain. Which would you recommend? Nora asked, adding a small amount of sugar to her coffee. Given the news I received this morning, I'd suggest the main road, Cole replied, his expression turning serious. News. Nora prompted, a sense of unease creeping into her anticipation. Sheriff Buchanan and his posse returned late last night. They tracked the Daggett gang but lost the trail in the foothills, the same area we'd have to pass through if we took the direct route. Nora's unease deepened. You think they might still be in the area? It's possible, Cole admitted. The sheriff has sent telegrams to neighboring towns to be on the lookout, but until the gang is caught, it's best to be cautious. The waitress arrived with plates of eggs, bacon, and biscuits, momentarily interrupting their conversation. After she had gone, Nora returned to the subject of the outlaws. Is my ranch, my property, safe from men like these? Cole considered the question carefully before answering. No place is entirely safe, Nora, but your uncle's ranch is well situated with good sightlines and sturdy buildings. And as I mentioned yesterday, the ranchers in the area look out for each other. Word travels fast when there's trouble. This was somewhat reassuring, but Nora made a mental note to learn how to handle a firearm properly as soon as possible. Her small revolver might be adequate for close encounters, but she suspected she would need more substantial protection on the frontier. As they finished their breakfast, Cole rolled up the map and tucked it into his saddlebag. I've settled our accounts with Mrs. Harmon and had Jimmy prepare midnight. We can leave whenever you're ready. Nora nodded, draining the last of her coffee. I'm ready now. Outside, the morning air was still cool, though the sun promised heat as it climbed higher in the sky. Midnight was waiting at the hitching post, looking refreshed and eager after his night of rest and extra oats. Cole helped Nora mount, then adjusted the stirrups for her comfort. I picked up a few supplies from the general store this morning, he said, indicating a package tied behind her saddle. Just some essentials: coffee, flour, sugar, salt, enough to tide you over until you can make a proper shopping trip. Nora was touched by his thoughtfulness. Thank you. That was very kind. Cole shrugged as if it were nothing, but the small smile that played at the corners of his mouth suggested he was pleased by her gratitude. He took Midnight's reins and led the way out of town, heading east along the main road. The journey to the Vance ranch was pleasant, the road winding through gentle hills and valleys. Cole walked with the same steady pace he had maintained the previous day, occasionally pointing out landmarks or sharing stories about the area. Nora found herself increasingly comfortable in his company, their conversation flowing easily from practical matters to more personal topics. Did you leave anyone behind in Philadelphia? Cole asked, as they paused to rest in the shade of a large cottonwood tree. Besides your cousin Edward, I mean, he added with a slight smile. Nora shook her head. No one of consequence. After my parents died, many of our so-called friends distanced themselves. I suppose misfortune is seen as contagious in certain social circles. Cole frowned at this, clearly disapproving of such fair-weather friendship. Their loss, he said simply. What about you? Nora asked, curious. Is there a Mrs. Reynolds waiting at your ranch? Cole's expression softened, a hint of sadness touching his eyes. No. There was someone once, Catherine Morgan. Her father owned the mercantile in Colorado City when I first arrived in the territory. We were engaged for almost a year. What happened? Nora asked gently, recognizing the pain in his voice even after what must have been years. Influenza, Cole replied, his gaze distant. A particularly bad outbreak 7 years ago. Catherine and her mother both fell ill. Neither survived. I'm so sorry, Nora said, feeling a deep sympathy for his loss. Cole was quiet for a moment, then seemed to shake off the old grief. Life goes on, he said simply, and sometimes it brings unexpected new beginnings. His gaze met hers as he spoke, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement, perhaps, of the connection that had formed so quickly between two strangers on a dusty trail. They continued their journey, cresting a final rise to reveal a valley spread out below them. In the center of the valley, nestled against the foothills just as Cole had described, sat a large ranch house with several outbuildings arranged around it. Fields of grazing cattle stretched to the west, while to the east horses dotted a fenced pasture. The Vance Ranch, Cole announced, gesturing toward the property. Your new home, Nora. Nora felt a surge of emotion as she looked down at her ranch now. It was larger and more impressive than she had imagined, the main house a substantial 2-story structure with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides. Smoke curled from the chimney, indicating that someone was in residence, probably the foreman Cole had mentioned. It's beautiful, she said softly. Cole smiled up at her. Jeremiah built it well. He always said he wanted it to last for generations. As they descended into the valley, Nora could make out more details: the weathered but well-maintained barn, the bunkhouse where the ranch hands lived, the corrals where several horses watched their approach with pricked ears. It was a working ranch in every sense, bustling with activity even in her uncle's absence. They were about halfway down the slope when a rider emerged from the barn, spotted them, and began galloping in their direction. As the rider drew closer, Nora could see it was an older man with a weathered face and a shock of white hair beneath his hat. "That'll be Henry," Cole said, confirming her suspicion that this was her uncle's foreman. The man reined in his horse a few yards away, his keen eyes taking in the scene: Cole walking beside Midnight, Nora in the saddle. Recognition, and then a broad smile spread across his face. "Well, I'll be damned, pardon my language, madam," he said, tipping his hat. "You must be Jeremiah's niece." "Henry Wilson, foreman of the Vance ranch. Your ranch now, I reckon." "Nora Vance," she replied with a smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Wilson. I understand you've been keeping things running smoothly in my absence." "Doing my best, madam," Henry replied modestly. His gaze shifted to Cole. "Good to see you, Reynolds. Didn't expect to find you playing escort." Cole explained briefly about Nora's lame horse and their journey from the McKinney homestead. Henry listened attentively, nodding in understanding. "Mighty fortunate you came along when you did," he remarked to Cole. Then to Nora. "Well, madam, let's get you settled in your new home. Mrs. Potter, she's our cook, has been airing out the house and getting your uncle's room ready for you since we got word you were coming." As they approached the ranch house, Nora could see more signs of preparation for her arrival: freshly washed curtains at the windows, a pot of geraniums by the front door, the porch swept clean. It was clear that her uncle's staff had gone to some effort to welcome her. A plump, gray-haired woman emerged from the house as they reached the yard, wiping her hands on her apron. This, Nora surmised, must be Mrs. Potter. Behind her came two cowboys who approached to take charge of Midnight. "Miss Vance, welcome to the Vance Ranch, Mrs. Potter said warmly as Cole helped Nora dismount. "I'm Martha Potter, the cook and housekeeper. Your uncle spoke of you often. He'd be mighty pleased to know you've come to claim his property." "Thank you, Mrs. Potter," Nora replied, genuinely touched by the welcome. "I appreciate all you've done to prepare for my arrival." The next hour passed in a whirlwind of introductions and tours. Henry showed Nora through the main house, a surprisingly comfortable and well-appointed dwelling, with solid furniture, colorful rugs, and even a small library filled with books on ranching, local history, and classic literature. "Your uncle was quite the reader," Henry explained as Nora ran her fingers over the leather-bound volumes. "Said a man's mind needed exercise just as much as his body. Upstairs, Mrs. Potter had prepared the master bedroom for Nora, a large, airy room with windows facing east and south, offering views of both the mountains and the horse pasture. The furniture was solid and masculine, clearly chosen by her uncle, but Mrs. Potter had softened the space with fresh linens and vases of wildflowers. "I hope it's to your liking, Miss Vance," the housekeeper said, watching Nora's reaction carefully. "We can make changes, of course, once you've had time to settle in." "It's perfect, Mrs. Potter," Nora assured her. "Far more comfortable than I expected to find." After the tour of the house, Henry led Nora and Cole through the outbuildings and corrals, introducing the ranch hands and explaining the operations. Nora listened attentively, asking questions and making mental notes. It was overwhelming, but also exciting. This was her property now, her responsibility, her future. Throughout it all, Cole remained by her side, occasionally adding information or clarification, but mostly allowing Henry to take the lead in introducing Nora to her new domain. She was grateful for his presence, finding strength in his quiet support as she faced the magnitude of what she had undertaken. By late afternoon, the tour was complete, and Mrs. Potter had prepared a substantial meal for everyone. They gathered around the large table in the dining room: Nora, Cole, Henry, Mrs. Potter, and the ranch hands. It was a lively meal, with conversation flowing easily and much good-natured teasing among the men. Nora found herself relaxing, already beginning to feel at home among these straightforward, hard-working people. After dinner, Henry and the hands returned to their evening chores, while Mrs. Potter cleared the table and disappeared into the kitchen. Nora and Cole moved to the porch, where they sat in comfortable rocking chairs watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. "So," Cole said after a companionable silence, "what do you think of your inheritance?" Nora considered the question, looking out over the property that was now hers. "It's overwhelming," she admitted, "but also, right somehow, as if this is where I was meant to be even though I never knew it until now." Cole nodded in understanding. "I felt the same way when I first saw my land. It just fit. I have so much to learn," Nora continued, "about ranching, about this land, about being responsible for the livelihoods of others." "You'll learn," Cole assured her, "and you have good people around you, Henry, Mrs. Potter, the hands. They know this ranch and they respected your uncle. They'll help you find your way." "And you?" Nora asked, turning to look at him directly. "Will you help me find my way too?" In the fading light, she could see his expression soften, the warmth in his blue eyes deepening. "If you want my help, Nora, you have it, for as long as you need it." The sincerity in his voice touched her deeply. In the brief time they had known each other, Cole had shown himself to be a man of his word, reliable, honorable, kind. The thought of having him as a neighbor and, she hoped, a friend, made the challenges ahead seem less daunting. "I should go," Cole said after another comfortable silence had stretched between them. "It's a fair ride back to my place and it's getting dark." Nora rose with him, suddenly reluctant to see him leave. "Must you go tonight? There's plenty of room here." Cole hesitated, clearly tempted by the offer. "Thank you, but I should get back. My foreman will be wondering what's become of me, and I have responsibilities that need attention." He smiled, softening his refusal. "But I'll ride over tomorrow if that's acceptable, help you get more settled, answer any questions that might have come up." "I'd like that," Nora replied, relieved that she would see him again so soon. They walked together to where one of the hands had saddled Midnight. Cole checked the cinches and adjusted the stirrups back to his preferred length. As he prepared to mount, he turned to Nora one last time. "You're going to be fine, you know," he said softly. "You have a strength in you that this land responds to." Before Nora could reply, Cole leaned down and gently kissed her cheek, a brief, chaste gesture that nonetheless sent warmth flooding through her. Then he swung into the saddle with practiced ease. "Until tomorrow, Nora," he said, tipping his hat. "Until tomorrow, Cole," she replied, her hand unconsciously rising to touch the spot his lips had brushed. As she watched him ride away, silhouetted against the last light of the setting sun, Nora felt a sense of both loss and anticipation. Loss, because his steady presence had become a comfort to her in the short time they had known each other. And anticipation because she knew he would return tomorrow, and the day after that, and perhaps many days to come. That night, as Nora prepared for bed in what had been her uncle's room, she found herself reflecting on the remarkable turn her life had taken. 2 days ago, she had been a stranded traveler with an injured horse and dwindling hopes. Now she was the owner of a successful ranch, surrounded by good people, with the promise of a friend, perhaps more than a friend, in Cole Reynolds. As she drifted off to sleep, the last image in her mind was of Cole walking beside Midnight, his steady pace and quiet strength carrying them both safely to their destination. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity and learning for Nora. True to his word, Cole rode over the following day and nearly every day thereafter. Sometimes he stayed only an hour or two, offering advice or help with a specific task. Other days he remained from dawn until dusk, working alongside Henry and the ranch hands, teaching Nora the fundamentals of ranching operations. Under their combined tutelage, Nora began to understand the rhythms and requirements of ranch life. She learned to ride better, to handle a rifle, to recognize the signs of health and illness in cattle and horses. She studied the account books her uncle had kept, gradually coming to understand the financial aspects of the operation. Henry proved to be a patient teacher and a loyal foreman. As Cole had predicted, he was more than willing to stay on and help Nora learn the business. His knowledge of the ranch and its history was invaluable, and his obvious affection for the property matched Nora's growing love for her new home. Mrs. Potter, too, became a trusted ally. Beyond her duties as cook and housekeeper, She served as Nora's guide to the social aspects of life in the territory. She advised Nora on everything from appropriate attire for different occasions to the complex web of relationships among the neighboring ranchers and townspeople. "You'll want to attend church in Colorado City at least once a month," Mrs. Potter advised during Nora's third week at the ranch. "Not just for the spiritual benefits, though those are considerable. It's where news is shared, connections are made, and your standing in the community is established." Nora took this advice to heart, and the following Sunday found her sitting in the simple wooden church in town, dressed in her best dress and bonnet. The service was less formal than what she was accustomed to in Philadelphia, but the message was heartfelt, and the congregation welcomed her warmly. After the service, there was a communal meal in the churchyard. Nora found herself surrounded by curious but friendly neighbors, all eager to meet Jeremiah Vance's niece and heir. Among them was Sheriff Buchanan, who reported that the Daggett gang had been spotted near the New Mexico border but had so far eluded capture. "We'll get them eventually," he assured Nora. "In the meantime, just keep your wits about you and your doors locked at night." Cole arrived partway through the gathering, immediately joining Nora's side as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She noticed the knowing glances exchanged among the other attendees and the approving smile Mrs. Potter directed their way. Clearly, the community had already formed opinions about the nature of their relationship. Strangely, Nora found she didn't mind these assumptions. The more time she spent with Cole, the more she appreciated his quiet strength, his unwavering integrity, and his gentle humor. Their initial connection had deepened into something that felt both solid and exciting, a foundation she could build upon, a possibility she could explore. For his part, Cole made no secret of his admiration for Nora. He complimented her progress as she learned new skills, defended her decisions when Henry or the hands occasionally questioned her judgment, and sought her company whenever his own responsibilities allowed. One evening in late October, about a month after Nora's arrival at the ranch, they sat together on the porch after dinner. The air had turned crisp with the approach of winter, and Nora had wrapped herself in a shawl against the chill. Cole had built a small fire in the stone pit at the edge of the porch, and the flames cast a warm glow over their faces. "Henry tells me you've decided to implement my uncle's plan to hire a younger man to train as his eventual replacement," Cole remarked, poking the fire with a stick. Nora nodded. "It seems sensible. Henry's knowledge is invaluable, but he admits the physical demands of the job are becoming difficult. I've placed an advertisement in the Colorado City Gazette and written to a few contacts in Tucson and Phoenix." "A wise decision," Cole approved. "Have you considered promoting from within? That young hand, James, he seems sharp and eager to learn." "I have considered it," Nora admitted. "But Henry thinks he needs a few more years of experience before he's ready for that level of responsibility, and I trust Henry's judgment in these matters." They fell into a comfortable silence, watching the fire and listening to the night sounds of the ranch horses moving in the corral, the distant lowing of cattle, an owl calling from a nearby tree. "I received a letter from my cousin Edward today," Nora said finally, breaking the silence. Cole glanced at her, his expression concerned. "What does he want? To rescue me from my frontier folly, as he puts it," Nora replied with a small, sardonic smile. "He has generously offered to purchase the ranch from me at what he considers a fair price, allowing me to return to civilization and the protection of family." Cole's jaw tightened. "And your response?" "I haven't written it yet," Nora said, looking out over the darkened ranch. "But I intend to decline his offer in the strongest possible terms. This is my home now. I have no desire to return to Philadelphia or to place myself under Edward's protection." The relief on Cole's face was evident, even in the flickering firelight. "I'm glad to hear it," he said softly. "This place suits you, Nora. You belong here." There was something in his tone that made her look at him more closely. "Just the place?" she asked, her heart suddenly beating faster. Cole set aside the stick he had been using to poke the fire and moved his chair closer to hers. "No," he said, his voice low and serious. "Not just the place." He reached out and took her hand, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. Nora, I know we've only known each other a short time, but I believe we could build something good together, something lasting. Nora's breath caught in her throat. She had hoped for this, had felt the growing connection between them, but to hear it expressed in words made it suddenly, wonderfully real. I feel it too, Cole, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. His blue eyes searched her face, looking for confirmation of her words. Whatever he saw there must have reassured him, because he smiled a warm, intimate smile that made her heart beat even faster. "May I court you properly, then?" he asked, his thumb gently stroking the back of her hand. "Call on you with intentions that go beyond neighborly assistance?" Nora felt a surge of happiness that brought unexpected tears to her eyes. "Yes," she replied simply. "I would like that very much." Cole's smile widened and he raised her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Then consider this the official beginning of my courtship, Miss Vance." The formality made Nora laugh softly, dispelling the intensity of the moment. "Does this mean you'll start bringing me flowers and sweets, Mr. Reynolds? If that's what you'd like," Cole replied, his eyes twinkling. "Though I suspect you might appreciate a well-bred heifer or a good saddle horse more than roses." This made Nora laugh outright. "You know me too well already." Cole's expression softened again. "I want to know you better, Nora, every day a little more." The sincerity in his voice touched her deeply. This was so different from the calculated courtship she had experienced in Philadelphia, where marriage was often more about financial and social alliances than genuine affection. Cole's straightforward declaration of interest felt refreshingly honest and real. As winter settled over the Arizona territory, Cole's courtship of Nora progressed with the same steady reliability that characterized everything he did. He called on her regularly, sometimes bringing small gifts, a book of poetry, a jar of honey from his own bees, once a beautiful silver hairpin he had purchased on a trip to Tucson. More precious than these material offerings, however, was the gift of his time and attention. Despite the demands of his own ranch, Cole made Nora a priority in his life. They rode together exploring the boundaries of their properties, attended church and social gatherings as a couple, and spent long evenings by the fire discussing everything from ranch management to their hopes for the future. The community observed their growing relationship with approval. Jeremiah Vance had been respected in the territory, and Cole was equally well regarded. The match seemed natural and right to everyone who knew them. Only Henry expressed any reservation, and that was done privately and with obvious reluctance. "Miss Nora," he said one afternoon as they reviewed the accounts together, "I hope you won't take this amiss, but I feel I should speak up as your uncle would have done if he were here." "What is it, Henry?" Nora asked, setting aside the ledger to give him her full attention. The foreman twisted his hat in his hands, clearly uncomfortable with what he was about to say. "It's about Mr. Reynolds. He's a fine man, one of the best I've known, but I want to be sure you're not rushing into anything because of the circumstances of how you met." Nora considered his words carefully. "You think my feelings for Cole might be influenced by gratitude rather than genuine affection?" "It's been known to happen," Henry said diplomatically. "A lady finds herself in distress, a gentleman comes to her aid, and in the emotion of the moment, feelings get confused." "I appreciate your concern, Henry," Nora replied, touched by the foreman's obvious care for her welfare. "But I can assure you that, while I am indeed grateful to Cole for his help when my horse went lame, my feelings for him have developed over time and are based on who he is as a man, not on the circumstances of our meeting." Henry studied her face for a moment, then nodded, apparently satisfied with what he saw there. "That's good enough for me, Miss Nora, and for what it's worth, I think your uncle would have approved of Mr. Reynolds. He always said Cole was one of the few men in the territory with both brains and backbone." This endorsement meant more to Nora than Henry could possibly know. Although she had few memories of her uncle, she had come to respect him through the stories others told and through the legacy he had left behind in the form of the ranch. To think that he would have approved of her choice in Cole was deeply gratifying. As Christmas approached, the ranch took on a festive atmosphere despite the hard work that continued regardless of the season. Mrs. Potter decorated the house with pine boughs and red ribbons, and the delicious smells of holiday baking filled the kitchen. Even the ranch hands seemed to work with extra energy, looking forward to the traditional Christmas feast and the small gifts Nora had ordered for each of them from the mercantile in Colorado City. On Christmas Eve, Cole arrived at the ranch earlier than usual, his wagon laden with firewood, a small pine tree, and several mysterious packages. With the help of the hands, he set up the tree in the parlor and assisted Mrs. Potter in decorating it with paper ornaments, strings of popcorn, and small candles. That evening, after a festive dinner with all the ranch staff, Nora and Cole exchanged their gifts privately by the fire in the parlor. Nora had agonized over what to give him, finally settling on a handsome leather-bound journal embossed with his initials. "For your thoughts and observations," she explained as he ran his fingers over the fine leather. "You mentioned once that your father kept detailed records of his business dealings and that it was a practice you admired." Cole looked genuinely touched by the gift and the thought behind it. "It's perfect, Nora, thank you." He then handed her a small, carefully wrapped package. Inside, Nora found a delicate silver locket on a fine chain. When she opened it, she discovered a tiny photograph of her uncle on one side, a younger, more robust version of the man she barely remembered. "How did you?" she began, too moved to complete the question. "Henry had it," Cole explained. "It was taken years ago when your uncle first established the ranch. I thought you might like to have it close to your heart." Tears welled in Nora's eyes at the thoughtfulness of the gift. "It's beautiful, Cole. Will you help me put it on?" She turned, lifting her hair so that Cole could fasten the chain around her neck. His fingers were gentle as they brushed her skin, sending a pleasant shiver down her spine. When she turned back to face him, he was looking at her with such tenderness that it took her breath away. "There's something else I want to give you, Nora," he said softly, "something that can't be wrapped in paper or tied with a ribbon." Her heart began to beat faster at the seriousness in his tone. "What is it?" Cole took both her hands in his blue eyes never leaving her face. "My heart," he said simply. "I love you, Nora Vance. I think I've loved you since that first day when you stood beside your lame horse with your chin up and your eyes full of determination despite your predicament." The declaration, though not entirely unexpected given the progression of their relationship, still filled Nora with a joy so intense it was almost painful. "Oh, Cole," she whispered, squeezing his hands, "I love you too, so much." The smile that lit his face at her words was like the sun breaking through clouds. Slowly, giving her ample time to pull away if she wished, Cole leaned forward and kissed her a gentle, reverent kiss that conveyed all the love and respect he felt for her. When they finally parted, both somewhat breathless, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I want to build a life with you, Nora," he murmured. "I don't want to rush you, but I also don't want to leave any doubt about my intentions." "Your intentions are perfectly clear, Mr. Reynolds," Nora replied with a soft laugh, "and entirely welcome." They spent the remainder of the evening in quiet conversation, planning a future that would join their lives and their properties. It was decided that they would wait until spring for a formal engagement, with a wedding to follow in early summer after the spring roundup. "That will give us time to make proper arrangements," Cole said practically, "and to figure out how best to manage our combined operations." Nora agreed with the timeline, though a part of her wished they didn't have to wait. Having found love in this unexpected place with this remarkable man, she was eager to begin their life together. As if reading her thoughts, Cole smiled and kissed her again, more deeply this time. "The waiting will be worth it," he promised, "and I'll be right here beside you every step of the way." Winter gave way to spring, bringing with it new challenges and joys. The spring roundup was Nora's first major test as a ranch owner, and she faced it with determination and the support of her now fiancé. As Cole had formally proposed on Valentine's Day with a beautiful ring that had belonged to his mother. The engagement was announced in the Colorado City Gazette and celebrated with a party at the Vance Ranch that drew neighbors from miles around. The community's approval was evident in the warmth of the congratulations and the generosity of the gifts. Even Nora's cousin Edward eventually sent his grudging good wishes, though his letter made it clear he still thought she was making a mistake by remaining in the uncivilized wilderness. Nora replied with a polite but firm letter, making it clear that she had found happiness and purpose in Arizona territory and had no regrets about her decision to claim her uncle's ranch. As the summer approached, wedding preparations began in earnest. Mrs. Potter and several of the neighboring women took charge of many of the details, allowing Nora to focus on running the ranch and enjoying her engagement. The ceremony would be held at the small church in Colorado City, with a reception to follow at the Vance Ranch. 2 weeks before the wedding, as Nora was reviewing fabric samples for new curtains in what would soon be her and Cole's bedroom, Henry burst into the house, his face grave. "Miss Nora," he said urgently, "there's trouble. The Daggett gang has been spotted near Carson's Creek, and they've already hit the Morrow place and the Jackson homestead." Nora's heart dropped. Carson's Creek was less than 10 miles from the ranch. "Casualties?" she asked, immediately thinking like the ranch owner she had become. "None at the Morrow place. They were in town when it happened. The Jacksons weren't so lucky. Mr. Jackson was beaten pretty badly when he tried to stop them from taking his horses. Mrs. Jackson is with him now. The doc says he'll recover, but it was a close thing." "And Cole?" Nora asked, fear suddenly gripping her heart. "His ranch is closer to Carson's Creek than ours." "That's just it, Miss Nora," Henry said grimly. "Cole's foreman rode over a few minutes ago. Cole was out checking the north pasture when the warning came in. He's not back yet and with the gang in the area." Nora didn't need to hear more. She was already moving toward the door. "Saddle my horse, Henry, and gather the hands. We need to find Cole before the Daggetts do." "Miss Nora, I can't let you ride out there with those outlaws on the loose," Henry protested. "Cole would never forgive me if anything happened to you." "I'm not asking for permission, Henry," Nora replied firmly. "Cole would do the same for any of us, and you know it." "Now, are you coming with me, or do I go alone?" Faced with her determination, Henry could only nod in resignation. "I'll get the men ready, but you stay close to me, you hear? No heroics." Within 15 minutes, a party of 6 Nora, Henry, and 4 of the most experienced ranch hands was riding hard toward Cole's property. They had sent a rider to Colorado City to alert Sheriff Buchanan, but there was no guarantee he would arrive in time if Cole was in danger. The ride to Cole's north pasture was tense and silent, each of them scanning the horizon for any sign of trouble. As they crested a hill overlooking the pasture, Nora's heart sank. In the distance, she could see smoke rising from what appeared to be a burning line shack. And riding away from it at a gallop were 5 men, the Daggett gang, she presumed. "There," she cried, pointing toward the smoke. "That's where Cole would check the fences first," Henry nodded grimly. "Let's go, but stay alert." "Those bastards, pardon my language," Miss Nora could circle back at any time. They rode hard toward the burning shack, Nora's fear growing with every hoofbeat. When they were about halfway there, a figure emerged from a stand of trees to their right, a man on horseback, riding toward them. "It's Cole," Nora exclaimed, recognizing his tall figure and the distinctive coloring of his horse. Relief flooded through her as Cole galloped to meet them. He looked disheveled and there was a cut on his cheek, but he was otherwise unharmed. "Nora, what are you doing here?" he demanded as he reined in beside her. "The Daggett gang is in the area. It's not safe, we heard," Nora replied, reaching out to touch his arm, needing the physical reassurance that he was truly all right. "Henry's foreman came to warn us. When we heard you were out here alone, we came to find you." Cole's expression softened, though concern still lined his face. "I appreciate that, but it was a risk you shouldn't have taken." He turned to Henry. "Did you let her come willingly, old man?" Henry snorted. "Have you tried stopping her when she's made up her mind?" Might as well try to stop a stampede with a feather. Despite the tension of the situation, Cole's lips twitched in a smile. "Fair point." His expression turned serious again. "The Daggetts burned my line shack and stole some cattle. I was checking the fence when I saw the smoke. By the time I got there, they were already riding off." "Did they see you?" Nora asked anxiously. Cole shook his head. "I don't think so. I kept to the trees, didn't want to take on 5 armed men alone." He glanced back toward the burning shack. "We should get back to the main house." If they're hitting ranches in the area, yours could be a target too. With Cole now safely among them, the group turned and rode hard for the Vance ranch. As they crested the final hill before the ranch came into view, Nora's relief at finding Cole unharmed was replaced by fresh horror. Smoke was rising from the direction of her ranch house. "No," she gasped, spurring her horse faster. "Nora, wait," Cole called, but she was already racing down the slope, heedless of the danger. As she drew closer, she could see that it wasn't the main house that was burning, but one of the outbuildings, the storage barn where hay and equipment were kept. Several figures were moving around the yard, her remaining ranch hands, fighting to contain the blaze. Cole caught up to her as she reached the yard, grabbing her reins to slow her horse. "Stay with me," he ordered, his voice brooking no argument. "We don't know if they're still here." They dismounted carefully, Cole keeping Nora behind him as they approached the nearest ranch hand. "What happened?" Cole demanded. "The Daggett gang," the young cowboy replied, his face smudged with soot. "They rode in about 20 minutes after you left, Miss Vance, started shooting and set fire to the barn. Mrs. Potter and the girls are safe in the root cellar. We managed to drive the gang off, but not before they took some of the horses." "Is anyone hurt?" Nora asked anxiously. "Jim took a bullet in the arm, but it's just a graze. Doc's been sent for." Over the next few hours, order was gradually restored to the ranch. The fire was contained and extinguished, the injured hand was treated by the local doctor who arrived promptly, and an inventory was taken of what had been stolen or destroyed. Sheriff Buchanan arrived with a posse just as the sun was setting. After hearing their account of the day's events, he organized a pursuit of the Daggett gang, promising to return with news as soon as possible. That night, after all the excitement had died down and the ranch was secure again, Nora and Cole sat together on the porch, physically and emotionally exhausted but grateful that the damage had not been worse. "I was so afraid when I saw that smoke," Nora admitted, leaning against Cole's shoulder. "All I could think was that I might lose you before we'd even begun our life together." Cole put his arm around her, drawing her closer. "And I felt the same when I saw you riding toward that burning shack. Nora, promise me you won't put yourself in danger like that again." "I can't promise that," she replied honestly, "any more than you can promise never to ride out alone to check your north pasture. This is the life we've chosen, Cole. It comes with risks." Cole was silent for a moment, then sighed. "You're right, of course, but today made me realize something." He turned to face her more directly. "I don't want to wait until summer to marry you, Nora. Life is too uncertain, too precious to waste a single day we could have together." Nora's heart leaped at his words. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying let's get married next week instead of next month. As soon as the church can accommodate us. If today taught me anything, it's that we should seize happiness while we can." Tears of joy filled Nora's eyes. "Yes," she whispered, reaching up to touch his face. "Yes, I want that too." Cole kissed her then, a kiss full of promise and passion and relief. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Nora Vance, more than I ever thought possible." "And I love you, Cole Reynolds," she replied, her voice steady and sure, "with all my heart." The wedding took place the following Sunday in the small church in Colorado City. It was a simpler affair than originally planned, but no less joyous for that. Nora wore a cream-colored dress that Mrs. Potter and the ranch women had worked day and night to complete in time. Cole looked handsome and slightly overwhelmed in a new black suit purchased for the occasion. The church was filled to capacity with friends and neighbors, all eager to celebrate the union of two people who had come to mean so much to the community. Sheriff Buchanan was there, having returned triumphantly from his pursuit of the Daggett gang. All 5 members were now in custody, awaiting trial for their crimes. As Nora walked down the aisle toward Cole, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. What had begun as a desperate flight from an unwanted future in Philadelphia had led her to a new life, a new home, and a love deeper and truer than she had ever imagined possible. When the minister asked who gave this woman to be married, Henry Wilson stepped forward proudly. "I do, on behalf of her uncle, Jeremiah Vance, who would have been mighty pleased to be here today." The ceremony was brief but meaningful. the vows spoken with clear voices and full hearts. When Cole slipped the gold band onto Nora's finger alongside her engagement ring, his hands were steady but his eyes were suspiciously bright. And when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the cheer that went up from the congregation nearly lifted the roof of the small church. The reception at the Vance Ranch, soon to be known as the Reynolds Vance Ranch, lasted well into the night, with food, music, dancing, and enough goodwill to overwhelm even the most cynical heart. Cole and Nora moved through the celebration hand in hand, accepting congratulations and good wishes from everyone present. As the evening drew to a close, the newlyweds found themselves once again on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the clear Arizona sky. Behind them, the sounds of the party continued, but in this moment they were alone together. "Happy, Mrs. Reynolds?" Cole asked, his arm around her waist. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Nora replied, leaning into his embrace. "And you, Mr. Reynolds?" "I have everything I could ever want," he said simply, his voice rich with emotion. "A beautiful wife, good land, and the promise of many years together." Nora turned in his arms to face him, her heart full of love and gratitude. "Do you ever think about that day when Penny went lame and you came riding up like some knight from a storybook?" Cole smiled, reaching up to touch the silver locket that still hung around her neck. "I thank God every day for that lame horse," he said softly. "It brought me to you." "And you gave me your horse and walked beside me," Nora murmured, remembering. "You've been walking beside me ever since, Cole." "And I always will," he promised, bending to kiss her beneath the vast canopy of stars. "Every step of the way for all the days to come." Epilogue: 10 years later, the summer sun beat down on the veranda of the Reynolds Vance Ranch house as Nora sat in her favorite rocking chair, watching the activity in the yard below. Cole was showing their 8-year-old son, Jeremiah, how to saddle his new pony, while their 6-year-old daughter, Catherine, sat nearby on the corral fence, offering unsolicited advice to her brother. The sight filled Nora's heart with contentment. The past decade had been full of challenges: droughts, harsh winters, economic uncertainties, but also filled with joy and growth. Under their joint management, the combined Reynolds-Vance property had become one of the most successful ranches in the territory, known for quality cattle and exceptional horses. Henry Wilson had retired 5 years ago, though he still lived in a comfortable cabin on the property and offered advice when asked. Mrs. Potter continued to run the household with efficient warmth, now aided by a young woman from town who was learning the ropes. Cole remained the same steadfast, honorable man Nora had fallen in love with, though the years had added a few silver strands to his dark hair and deepened the laugh lines around his eyes. Their partnership, both in marriage and in business, had only grown stronger with time. As she watched, Cole lifted little Catherine down from the fence and placed her on the pony behind Jeremiah, cautioning them both to hold on tight as he led the animal in a slow circle around the corral. The children's laughter carried up to the veranda, causing Nora to smile. "They're growing so fast," came a voice from behind her. Nora turned to see Martha McKinney, now in her 70s but still spry, coming onto the veranda with a pitcher of lemonade. The McKinneys had become like family over the years, with Thomas serving as an honorary grandfather to the children until his passing 2 winters ago. "Too fast," Nora agreed, accepting a glass of the cool drink. "It seems like just yesterday that Jeremiah was learning to walk." Martha settled into the rocking chair beside Nora's, her gaze on the scene in the corral. "You've built a fine life here, Nora. Jeremiah would be proud of what you and Cole have accomplished." "We've been blessed," Nora acknowledged. "Though I never would have imagined any of this that day when Penny went lame, and I thought my journey was over before it had properly begun." "The Lord works in mysterious ways," Martha said with a smile. "One door closes, another opens. Sometimes it's a door you never even knew was there." Down in the corral, Cole looked up, catching Nora's eye. Even after 10 years of marriage, the love in his gaze still made her heart skip a beat. He waved, and she waved back, a simple gesture that conveyed volumes about the bond they shared. The sound of an approaching rider drew their attention. A young cowboy came galloping up the drive, pulling his horse to a stop near the corral. He spoke briefly to Cole, who nodded and immediately lifted the children from the pony, setting them on the ground with instructions to go to the house. Nora tensed, instantly alert to potential trouble. "Martha, would you take the children inside, please?" The older woman nodded, understanding at once. She moved quickly for her age, meeting the children at the steps and ushering them into the house with promises of cookies and stories. Cole was already striding toward the veranda, his expression serious but not alarmed. "Cattle rustlers hit the Grayson place last night," he reported as he reached Nora. "Sheriff wants to organize a posse to track them. They're heading this way now." Nora nodded, years of ranch life having prepared her for such emergencies. "How many men do we need to send? I'll go myself with Miguel and 3 others," Cole replied. "The rest should stay here to protect the property just in case." This was the reality of their life. Danger and uncertainty were always present, requiring vigilance and preparedness. But they faced these challenges together as they had from the beginning. "Be careful," Nora said, rising to touch his cheek. Cole caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. "Always am. I've got too much to come home to." The sound of multiple riders approaching signaled the arrival of the sheriff and his men. Cole gave Nora a quick kiss before heading back down to meet them. She watched him go, straight-backed and confident, the same man who had walked beside her horse all those years ago when she was stranded and alone. Life had taken her on an unexpected path, from the drawing rooms of Philadelphia to the open spaces of the Arizona Territory. Along the way, she had found strength she didn't know she possessed, a home she hadn't known she needed, and a love deeper and more enduring than she had ever dreamed possible. As Cole mounted his horse and rode out with the posse, he turned back once, raising his hand in farewell. Nora returned the gesture, a silent promise passing between them, the same promise they had made to each other that first day and every day since. Whatever challenges came their way, they would face them together, walking side by side through all the days of their lives.